Welcome to All About Art. My name is Alexandra, and I'm an art historian, curator, and writer. Within this podcast, topics relating to art history, cultural policy, the art sector, as well as a large range of other art-related topics will be covered. Conducting critical discussions, having entertaining exchanges, or just enjoying some relaxing chats, All About Art is where you'll find it all. Join me in exploring and developing cultural discourse. And here we are with another art news recap, and today I will be chatting about April 2021. I'm going to start off with a fun story that I read about in the New York Times, and it happened in Seoul, South Korea, at the beginning of the month. An American street artist, John Andrew Perello, also known as JonOne, had a work that was exhibited in a show called Street Noise, and it was displayed next to paint cans, brushes, and also, for example, the artist's shoes, and all of these different things were scattered around it. There were guidelines indicating that it was indeed a work of art, which, just a side note, is worth around 400 grand, may I just add? But a couple passing by thought that it was a participatory mural, and they grabbed a brush with paint on it and added 3 green blotches onto the abstract piece. The couple was identified through CCTV, and they were then arrested, but then released after authorities had determined that the vandalism, if you can even call it that, was completely accidental. I mean, the blotches aren't small. The article that I read said that they took up an area of 35 by 11 inches, which is around 90 by 30 centimeters, rounded up. The New York Times stated that JonOne, the artist, said that he was, quote, disappointed and angry that his work had been defaced. And there was another quote within the article where the artist stated that art should be religious. You don't paint on a church. I'm going to put my phone on silent. Why does this always happen to me? Goodness gracious. Anyway, back to it. That whole thing in itself made me gag a little bit. I mean, sorry, but I'm going to look at this a little bit critically. Like, so you can paint on a church because what? You're God in that analogy? Like, why can he paint and why can he create, but other people can't and other people can't add to that? I think that it's just this overly hyped idea of the artistic genius that has been treated throughout art history for centuries. And it's outdated, it's overrated, and it's simply just silly. The artist said that the vandalism of his work reminded him of growing up in New York and feeling that his talent was not appreciated. And if that doesn't say enough about his insecurities, I don't know what does. Like, man, life happens, and these people felt pulled to your work enough to really interact with it. They felt compelled to leave their mark and to participate. Isn't that 10,000 times better than your talent being worshipped? This whole situation reminds me of the Banksy being shredded at Sotheby's in 2018. I was in the room for that because I was working that evening and I didn't even know what was going on. Everything happened so fast. I then actually ended up writing an essay about it for my class at university. And I really think that these instances are extremely interesting when it comes to thinking about authorship and authenticity, which is also something that the article mentions. So props to that. I think that it's a really, really valid point. And it brings up a much bigger question of what the function of art is and why it is that we view authorship with such importance. Anyway, that's just some food for thought. And I would love it if you could send me an email or a DM or whatever and tell me what you think, because I could really go on for ages about this. I feel like it's so multifaceted. You can talk about things like contagion and how, for example, knowing that a work of art is by a particular artist and how that is similar to when people, like in the audience of a concert, jump at the chance to catch the sweaty rag that the lead singer just threw into the crowd. You can also view it from the angle of capitalism and how authorship is always linked to financial value. Or you can talk about this myth of the artistic genius that I mentioned before and take a completely different approach. I really find the discussion incredibly interesting. All right, but on to the next article. I mentioned this one on my Instagram a while back, and I also touched on it in the March Art News episode. So I'll keep it brief, but here we go. Germany decided to repatriate the Benin Bronzes to Nigeria. A large amount, like thousands, of plaques and sculptures were looted from the Kingdom of Benin, which is now southern Nigeria, and are scattered all around the world. Well, mostly the Western world. The bronzes are in museums in the US and the UK. And again, I will mention the British Museum. And I hope everyone listening to this, I hope you're all shaking your heads in unison at the museum, because they have done nothing to get the ball rolling on trying to repatriate their stolen artifacts, which really do go beyond just the Benin Bronzes that they have. Anyway, this is an ongoing issue, and many institutions around the world need to take the necessary steps to do things fairly. As I said, I wanted to keep that brief because I have talked about it before, so I'm going to move on to the next article, and this one is from the LA Times. The senior curator of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, Mia Locks, has resigned, apparently due to the leadership being resistant to adhering to its commitment to diversity. In addition to that, the director of human resources also resigned because of a, quote, hostile work culture. Locks was in the job for less than 2 years and apparently said that she was grateful that the MoCA launched initiatives regarding diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility, but that the leadership was not ready to fully embrace it. This sounds like there are so many different aspects of work politics involved, and there is a lot of he said, she said. The museum stated that they were committed to the initiative and listed a lot of great steps that they're taking in the right direction, but the senior curator didn't feel like they were fully committed. Just because some steps are taken does not mean that it's enough, and we don't really know the details as outsiders to the organization. But what we do know is that there is such a lack of transparency in the industry, and many are trying to change that. But it goes hand in hand with accountability. With the example of the director of the HR department, Carlos Viramontes, there were complaints that were brought all the way to the museum's board. It was about how Viramontes was experiencing difficulties with his boss. And Viramontes says that the board said, and I'm going to quote here, "We hear you, you're right, but we're not going to do anything about it. They said she was my boss, and it's up to her." At that point, I realized if this is how they were handling things, there was no fixing this. So I decided to leave. The article within the LA Times goes into further detail about the back and forth between Viramontes and the museum and what each of them claim, and it seems like it's getting really complex. One thing that he said that really underlines it all is, and again I'm going to quote, "It's not a good culture there. There's a lot of lip service about what they want to be and to stand for, being a great place to work and caring about people. But behind the scenes, it's a whole other thing." I hear ya. I hear you loud and clear. And the museum is apparently restructuring, so we'll see where it goes and if there will be bigger changes and more transparency. Apparently, with the restructuring, Klaus Biesenbach, which is the current director, I think he's going to be moving to a new position. Also still very senior. But when these changes happen, that doesn't always mean that positive changes will follow. Definitely not. But I guess we can just see where it will go. And as I said before, this whole aspect of accountability, and maybe the fact that Biesenbach is going from being, I think if I recall correctly, he's going from being an executive director to being the artistic director. And as I said, doesn't really mean that that's going to bring some huge amount of change. I don't think it will. I think that there needs to be a lot more, but maybe if they bring in an executive director that is more for the diversity efforts and that really encourages that and encourages a better workplace and more transparency, then maybe this is a chance for the institution to take a step in the right direction. Speaking of transparency, There have been some more updates with another topic I mentioned back in the March Art News episode, and that is Leon Black stepping down as the chairman of the Museum of Modern Art. Or I shouldn't say stepping down, and I don't think that articles and news outlets should be saying that he's stepping down, because basically he just said that he wouldn't be going for a re-election. So let's not act like he's stepping down right now, but instead he's waiting until his term expires on July 1st and then won't be going for a re-election. So let's just get that straight. But the museum chose his replacement, and it will be Marie-Josee Kravis, who has been on the board of MoMA since 1994 and was board president from 2005 to 2018. So she knows her way around. Not so sure if that's the best thing in the world, but it is what it is. And after looking her up a little bit and looking into what she's done, she has done a fair bit in the past for women in business and, for example, women in STEM, as well as conducted other philanthropic endeavors. So that's a positive. The article praised her, saying that she combines intelligence and appreciation for great art, and that she has a wonderful relationship with the staff. It said the museum couldn't ask for more, so it seems like a positive development in the wake of Leon Black and his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, which you can hear more about, as I said, in the March Art News episode, and I think I mentioned it at around 8 minutes. Here we go again with diversity and inclusion and making a difference. And I just really think that I see a lot of smaller institutions and smaller organizations really trying to get younger people on their board and really trying to get different people coming from different backgrounds, coming from different ways of life and different careers, and how they can all have a positive impact on these institutions. And I feel like the biggest ones, like MoMA, that could really take the chance to make a statement and to pave the way, they are choosing a rich white woman. And I have nothing against who she is, but the question is she really going to make a difference? Is it really going to be different? Or could she also have shady financial dealings with people and we just haven't found out about it yet? I mean, everyone could, but I just feel like it's from the same background as Leon Black, and it's the similar situation and similar societal structure and impact. And again, it's just this underlining the whole money equals power thing that I just don't think is really allowing for positive change to happen. I think that especially in the United States, and the fact that the museums have a very strong patronage system in comparison to Europe, where the government takes care of a lot of funding when it comes to art institutions, I feel like the museums in the States are very strongly impacted by the philanthropic choices of America's wealthy. And as I said, I don't have an issue with the fact that she's wealthy. The issue that I have with all of this is that isn't the whole goal trying to get art to everyone? Isn't the whole goal trying to make things less exclusive? Because apparently that's not really the case if you're going to have people up in the seats of power on these institutions that don't really relate to people who go to work on the subway every day and have to bring tennis shoes with them and a change of high heels, or the ones that pre-cook their meals because they can't afford to go out for lunch. And I don't want people like that thinking that they can't walk into an art gallery because the girl sitting at the counter will look them up and down and deem them as unworthy because they can't afford a $150,000 painting. But that's what the art world feels like to people. And I'm sorry that it feels that way, and I don't want it to feel that way. It felt that way for me, and I work in it. And I mean, I say it felt that way in past tense because it definitely does not feel that way anymore. But in the very beginning, I was definitely self-conscious because there are very strong classist structures present within the arts. And I just think that having someone who maybe understands that will be able to have a bigger impact and reach more people and make decisions and advocate for those people in comparison to someone who doesn't really understand that. With that being said, that was my last article. I do just want to say that I am happy to hear that a woman will be taking the position of the chair of the board of MoMA. But yeah, okay, I'm going to say goodbye for now. Thank you so much for listening, as always. And I really appreciate the support, to be honest. This is episode number 10, and I'm a baby podcaster, but this has been really, really fun since I launched at the beginning of April, funnily enough. And as I said, I really appreciate the support that everyone has been showing me, and I am just incredibly grateful. So yeah, as always, thank you so much for listening. And that is it for today on All About Art. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating or a review, as it helps more people discover the show. Also, feel free to share with your friends, or if you share on social media, tag me and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening.